Okay, so passion flower. So passion flower is one of the most amazing, I mean, it's the best flower ever. It has to be. To me. Like, has anyone seen a passion flower, been right up close with one? They're growing wildly here on Kauai. What I love about this is that it's got a lot of bells and whistles to it. Now, we talk about hormones. This right here is one of the most important herbs to know about. One of the most powerful flowers to know about. It has a compound called chrysin. And chrysin is one of the most studied what's called aromatase inhibitors or estrogen blockers. Estrogen blockers. Has anyone heard this term aromatization? Okay. So aromatization is basically what is the deal with estrogen dominance. That's a big subject. There's a lot there. But if I could just put one really important thing that everyone should know about is this idea of aromatization. It's basically the process where your juvenile hormones, your youthening hormones, what are those? Testosterone, human growth hormone, progesterone, DHEA, thyroid stimulating hormone, things of that nature, vitamin D. The hormones, the major hormones that we need for robust, vital health and for longevity, essentially. Youthful, graceful aging, right? Now, there's a process called aromatization where certain receptors in the body will get a hold of, let's say, testosterone. If your body produces either more testosterone than it needs, or there's a problem with your hormone metabolism, some of that testosterone will be converted into estrogen. So, for example, you see bodybuilders, right? What are they known for? How'd they get those muscles? I would go with the latter. Yeah. And a lot of that, if it is protein, then a lot of that's inflammation. I've always had that theory, by the way, about huge bodybuilders. I always thought about that. I was like, nope, no way. I've been an athlete all my life. I've been around some extremely fit people that can lift a lot of weight, and they don't look like that. I was like, no, that is inflammation. The musculature is being pressed outward, right? But basically, it's, steroid enhancements, right? So the bodybuilding world found out that at a certain tipping point in that person's aging sequence or their metabolism, there would be this process where all that musculature would turn into flab and their belly would unfold, right? We've seen this with some well-known bodybuilders, right? Certain point in that andropause, which is basically what it's called, like there's menopause, there's also andropause, where the hormones basically go and tip out. And then we call that estrogen dominance, where the body is basically flooded with too much estrogen and certain types of estrogens that cause this aromatization. And same thing with women, progesterone. You need your progesterone to be leading the cascade, and estrogen is kind of like a backup singer. The most simple way that I could explain hormones is that it's like a symphony. Your hormones, it's not really about how much or, like how much of a hormone you have. It's the ratio. How well is the communication between those hormones? So, for example, if you have an orchestra, you have a lead singer, right? You have somebody that is designed to be the leader. So in a woman's case, that would be progesterone. In a man's case, that would be testosterone. Now, where we have the problem is that you have a backup singer that gets it in their mind that, hey, you know what? They're hogging up all the glory. I want to be a front stage singer. I want to lead the orchestra. And they muscle themselves through and push out the lead singer. And then you become estrogen dominant. By the way, one of the ways, and we're going to wrap this back with passion flower, one of the ways that you can push out the estrogen metabolites, as they're called, is through excessive stress. It's probably the number one thing. It's probably the number one thing. putting environmental factors aside, stress, sympathetic overload, excessive thinking, it creates...
Push it out, you mean increase the estrogen?
Well, actually, what I mean by pushing it out is that it's been verified that your hormones, just like your neurotransmitters, have certain pathways in which they travel through, right? And so, for example, cortisol. We know cortisol as the stress hormone. We also call it a catabolic hormone because it breaks things down, right? It starts to break our musculature down in our whole frame, right? So cortisol actually pushes progesterone out of the pathway. And progesterone actually creates estrogen dominance, or it creates what's called the buildup of estrogen metabolites. Depends how deep down the rabbit hole and how technical you want to get, but that's the basic idea. So one of the things about passion flower is that this compound chrysin is an aromatase inhibitor, and what each one of us wants to do is that we want to do a dance between hormone boosting or hormone modulating herbs and foods and supplements just to keep ourselves balanced, because we are flooded with estrogen mimicking environmental contaminants. Plastic, by the way, is the #1 xenoestrogen or estrogen mimicking compound ever. And it bioaccumulates. What does that mean? It accumulates in our biology slowly, but over time it builds up. Another problem with the basically the animal agriculture at this point, because fat, tissue fat, is a storage container for environmental toxicity, it concentrates, like a cow, for example. A cow will concentrate up to 100 times the environmental pollutants than the plant does that they eat. Does that make sense? So if an animal eats a plant that's contaminated, it will concentrate up to 100 times as much that was in that plant, right? Grazing on grass or whatever it's feeding, grain-fed, whatever the deal is. That's just a reality. So that's another reason why I say if you're going to eat flesh products, make it a condiment, not the main course.